Hello there, this is the 6th edition on News Central Television. We're coming to you live from our studios in Abuja. I am Nelta Igbe. Our top stories at this hour. The federal government announces plans to deploy military veterans for security operations in ungoverned spaces. Nigeria's Senate moves to investigate Christmas Day strike in Sokoto. And death toll from landslide in Indonesia rises to 38, with dozens still unaccounted for. We'll bring you details in a moment. Now, beginning with security matters, the federal government has announced plans to deploy military veterans to help secure ungoverned spaces and stimulate economic activities in conflict-affected parts of the country. The initiative follows the inauguration of an 18-member committee by the Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, tasked with reclaiming ungoverned areas and repositioning the Nigerian Legion Corps of Commissionaires and Veterans. The committee was inaugurated at the Defense Headquarters in Abuja. Government officials say the strategy will integrate experienced former service personnel into local security and development efforts, particularly in areas with limited state presence. The Nigerian Senate has resolved to hold a closed-door session to investigate a reported breach of the country's territorial integrity following a United States military airstrike in Sokoto State. The motion brought forward on Wednesday by Senator Abdul Ningi raised serious concerns over the lack of legislative briefing or constitutional authorization for foreign military operations within Nigeria's borders. While the strike reportedly targeted terrorist hideout on Christmas Day, the lawmakers are demanding clarity on the operational framework and the level of coordination between the federal government and the U.S. military. Senator Ningi, speaking on the matters of privilege, criticized the audacity of the operation, arguing that such a significant military action on Nigerian soil should not have occurred without the knowledge of the National Assembly. Responding to the point of order, Senate President Godswill Akpabio acknowledged the sensitivity of the issue but insisted that detailed discussions regarding national security and diplomatic ties with the U.S. be moved to a private executive session.
In spite of whatever achievement that the heat made, Mr. President, this assembly has a core responsibility in governance. This assembly has a core accountability in governance. This assembly is not an appendage of the executive. Therefore, for every action intended, the leadership of the National Assembly must be taken along. It is not right. This is our second day. We have not heard from the chairman of the National Assembly as regards to this serious matter.
Because it's a matter of security, we really should not discuss it in the open. We should have a closed session so that you'll be well briefed. But we lost the Distinguished Senator Akwashiki on our first sitting, and there was no time to undertake that. So you are very right. Your point of order is noted, and I want to assure you that just like you read on the pages of newspapers that the attack, I'm sure you are referring to what happened in Sokoto, happened with the concurrence and the collaboration of the Nigerian security services. We have also been so brief, but we need to brief you in closed session. We need to brief you in closed session. Security is not something that we speak in the market.
My colleague Sergey Ibrahim was at the National Assembly during plenary and now joins me from the newsroom. Sergey, that conversation, I mean, that topic is quite sensitive to a lot of people and indeed to the nation. But what other things, highlights did you get from the plenary today?
Complained so much about.
Yes. I think you're muted there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go
Okay,
ahead.
good evening, Yosa, once again.
So, meanwhile, you're looking real nice.
Thank you very much. But then to the matters of the Senate, which was not also looking very nice, if you let me put it that way. But then Senator Abdul Ningi was concerned, of course, about the fact that lawmakers were not informed prior to the attack, to the airstrike by the U.S. authorities. You know, he said it's a breach and it's an insult to him. But then, of course, we saw the Senate president coming to say, of course, his concerns are valid. They should have, of course, been briefed on these issues, but save for the fact that they had to adjourn plenary quite early because, of course, as it's customary in the National Assembly, when they lose a colleague or, in the case, a lawmaker, they adjourn early, they observe a minute of silence, and then in the honor of that person, you know, they rest the remaining activities of the day and then continue on the next legislative day. Now, he had raised this concern after the votes and proceedings had been taken, just before they started presenting, you know, of course, the bills of the day. So he raised this point of order. So he clarified and said, we would have, you know, brought some details about this issue, but then again, it's a sensitive matter. We cannot discuss it on the open floor, and it will be done in an executive session. Of course, plenary went on as usual. The expectation was today there should be some deliberation on a committee report, particularly on the committee of the electoral matters with regards to the Electoral Act Amendment bill. However, unfortunately, that was not able to happen because the senator, the chairman of the Committee on Electoral Matters, was unfortunately not on the floor of the Senate today, and that was, you know, deferred to be had on the next legislative day. And of course, finally, the controversial tax reform bill. The Senate president today had, in his words, put the matter to rest finitely, I mean to say, because he insisted and instructed the Sergeant at Arms at the National Assembly, at the Senate precisely, to distribute copies that were passed by lawmakers in that Senate. So they, you know, read it, understanding that, of course, ensure that there are no discrepancies between what was transmitted from the Senate to the presidency, of course, the office of the president, and signed, and so as to ensure that any gray areas or any issue that has been causing controversy over the course of the time that this bill had been passed, signed into law, and implementation would no longer cause any rancor. So these, of course, were highlights from the Senate, which we'll be seeing subsequently in the report to come. Nyota.
All right, thank you so much, Sagir. I mean, a lot of people were also hoping to have heard some word concerning the budget. There are other issues that the Senate needed to look at, having had such a long time away and resting. Coming back, one would have expected that they would hit the ground running, but I guess they felt that this is a more important issue besides the tax reform law. Thank you so much, Sagir.
Pleasure.
Let's move on to Lagos. A peaceful protest against demolition and forced evictions in Lagos took a dramatic turn today after protesters were dispersed with tear gas near the Lagos State House of Assembly in Alausa. The demonstrators had earlier marched nearly 6 kilometers from Ikeja Underbridge, demanding an end to what they describe as forced evictions and displacement across several communities. Well, my colleague Victor Mbadike was on ground and joins us from our Lagos studio. Hello, Victor.
Good evening.
I do hope you're feeling better because we saw that footage of you with smarting eyes. I hope you're feeling better now.
Yeah, I'm much better. I'm much better, thank you.
Okay, so just walk us through this whole thing. I mean, why the tear gas? Is it that the protest was not supposed to be, or the residents did not have a right to come and say, hey, you're making us homeless, do something about this? What were you able to glean from this?
Well, I'm not sure why that tear gas incident actually happened, because ordinarily you would say perhaps because the protesters went beyond the scope of their responsibility. You could say maybe they were violent, you could say maybe because they become uncontrollable and all of that, but none of such happened, at least for the fact that I was and I saw the entire proceeding. So the protesters were really peaceful, marching through from Ikeja Underbridge to the State House of Assembly. I mean, everything went as smooth as it can ever be. Although the little infraction there might be the fact that they took a major part of the road, and which of course caused a heavy traffic or major traffic. So if you did hear what the commissioner of police said when I asked him why he did that, because it was barely 20 minutes that they got to the entrance of the State of Assembly trying to demand answers from the legislators to, demand that if you're going to evict us from our homes, evict us from our offices, where else do we go to? How do we go back to work? Where do we sleep? And all of that. And they just sat there on the floor hoping that somebody was going to listen to them or attend to them, since they were not going to be allowed to go into the chambers. And then about 20 minutes later, after they got to the entrance, we just saw canisters just flying around, and before you could say Jack Robinson, everybody, scampered for safety. Of course, safety first. Some persons left their bags, some persons, their phones were broken, and slippers flying around. I mean, nobody, even if you came with your child or something, nobody probably remember they had something or somebody that close to them until they got to safety. Of course, we also had, to quickly, get the safety, but we were able to get a couple of shots from that incident. And then we went back to the commissioner of police along with the regime to ask questions why they had to use some brute force on these peaceful protesters. And 2 or 3 key things he said. One was the fact that he felt that they were blocking the major road because he had earlier warned that they should stay off the road, so as not to hamper those, vehicles, going about their, businesses. And then the other thing he said was that, didn't I hear one of the organizers, Taiwo Hassan, also known as Sokoto, didn't I hear when, himself and other protesters were hurling insults at him and calling him several names? And I mean, is that normal? Is that supposed to be? Do you have any right to insult the commissioner of police, even though he has to be professional about it? But, there's a limit at which, according to him, there's a limit at which he could take some of those insults. So these are some of the major issues that made them use that, you can see on your screen, the canisters, firing triggers and the protesters. And I did ask him again, if you call this minimal force, because that was the language you used, if you call this minimal force, I mean, we all know the implications of using tear gas on protesters. Some of them might have medical conditions. Some of them who are probably carrying babies on their backs. It could cause a chaotic scene. There could be stampede and all of that. Were you not thinking about that? And they said that was the best that we could do. Whether you use water cannons or not, it's still the same thing. That was the best they could do. After all, they're also police officers, they're human beings too, that got affected by the incident too. So it's okay for them to use it. But so that's the sad incident really, and it's really bad because some persons got injured, and we went to the hospital to meet with one of the protesters who was really, really injured. There was a laceration on her chin, yes, because the canister tore through that chin, and even the hospital themselves cannot treat that case, and they had to transfer her. These are some of the issues, basically, Neota.
You were not hurt, and thank you for reporting on this. Thank you. Now, a coalition of civil society organizations under the banner of the Civil Society Situation Room earlier today protested at the main entrance of the National Assembly, calling on the Senate to expedite action on the passage of the Electoral Act Amendment bill before Parliament. Now, members of the coalition were concerned over what they described as delays by the Senate in passing the amendments, despite their counterparts in the House of Representatives concluding work on the bill before embarking on the Christmas and New Year break. They warned that delay could create challenges ahead of the 2027 general elections and also affect planning by the Independent National Electoral Commission.
There shall be no more delay. Citizens are saying they are less than 1% of Nigerian population. By June this year, it will be exactly 3 years they enter there. They've not done anything to make us happy. They've not done anything to address the suffering and plight of Nigerians. What they have done is about themselves. We are asking them to leave this one, to pass this Electoral Amendment law bill for us, so that we can point at something they've done for us. That's why we are here.
This particular Electoral Act we are talking about is likely going to hop the game a bit because of some of the things Co-Governor have said in terms of penalty for electoral offenders, in terms of administrative amendment they have been able to do from INEC even to the judiciary. in terms of declaration of election results, in terms of political party management, internal party, you know, a whole lot of things that we all improve our election. We don't want to have a repeat of what we have in 2023.
Well, I'm being joined by Oluwafemi Adebayo, Head Research and Strategy, Impact Development Initiative. Thank you for joining us, Oluwafemi.
Thank you for having me.
So this, I mean, what was the point in this protest? Seeing that this is just the second day of plenary for the Senate, couldn't they have been given a few more days to, maybe till like next week? Why protest now?
So I think it's a question of time and the timing. The counterpart, I mean, the House of Rep, who is the counterpart of the Nigerian Senate, the Green Chamber had considered this bill clause by clause in December before they went on break. But however, as it stands now, the Senate has not done that. And today, from the proceedings of the House, I mean the other paper, it was also said that this was stepped down. And it's because we are racing against time. 2027 is here. The current Electoral Act 2022 says notice of election should be given at least 365 days before the elections. And every one of us know that 2027 election or presidential election would be in February. But the point still remains the fact that we've seen instances where, you know, the Electoral Amendment Bill were declined, assent were declined by, you know, former presidents in the country. And we don't want that to happen because there are some important, amendments that we consider that are very important to the credibility of the electoral process come 2027. And if we delay it further, then it means that it will be impossible to achieve all of this or to have all of this before the 2027 general elections. And that is why we're saying that the Senate need to consider the bill now. And we've been having this, you know, this engagement, press releases. For some instances, we've been able to, you know, send direct letters, advocacy letters to them to say, immediately you resume, there's a need for you to consider this electoral amendment bill. But yesterday, it was not considered. Today, it was not considered. But it then means that Nigeria need to speak with action and not just, you know, mere talk.
The question will be, why the fear as we speak? I mean, the elections are still over a year and 3 months away. There's still enough time for this amendment to be done and passed and signed into law. But as though everybody, is it simply because the House of Representatives have done their own bit, so you think the Senate needs to hurry up and get theirs done as well so that it's once and for all?
No, that's not the point. We're not saying that the Senate need to rush without, you know, doing due diligence. No, that's not the point. But if you look at the timeline, the National Assembly had started this process immediately after the 2023 general elections. And the National Assembly had spent more than 2 years on these electoral amendment bills or Electoral Act Amendment bills. But the point still remains this: why do we have to spend this number of years when we know that the elections are closer and there are regional and international conventions that actually go against the fact that you're changing electoral laws very close to the elections? And the truth is, it also does not, you know, make any form of logic or logical sense to say you're changing electoral law closer to the elections, because it will affect planning. We also agree that INEC need a lot of time to be able to prepare for the elections. And if you're changing the electoral law, possibly maybe 3-6 months to the elections, it could affect a lot of things. And you remember, and our listeners also know, that when it comes to the challenge regarding our elections, logistics is one of the major challenge, right? INEC needs to prepare, stakeholders need to prepare, even political parties, the politicians themselves need to prepare. So if at the end of the day, we are changing some of these, you know, frameworks closer to the elections, it might be problematic. It might be difficult to be able to achieve credible elections. And that's what we're saying that. And if you look at it, the National Assembly, when the national anthem were to be, you know, amended or changed, the National Assembly did expedite this process to be able to get it done within a day. I remember that one of the most amendments that have been the fastest in the country is the amendment to the Police Act. it in itself. So if you look at it, why is the National Assembly spending more than 2 years on electoral amendment?
Maybe it's because of the number of amendments or the number of issues with the Electoral Act that they need to deal with. Let's just look at a couple of them. For want of a better example, INEC's excessive discretion. They say INEC has too much discretion. Technology use, timeline interpretation, oversight is weak. Accountability is softer than it should be for such powers. Weak enforcement of campaign finance limits. So, but then some will say all of these things, it might be too much for INEC. I mean, INEC is more or less understaffed, and there's so much that INEC regulate the political parties, ensure campaign funds are properly scrutinized and regulated. That is really too much. So I understand that these are some of the things that have been looked at, but would you say that these are some of the things that the House of Representatives, in the passage of their own version of the Electoral Act, did they look at some of these things?
Yes, pretty well. I'm also very much aware of the fact that the National Assembly, especially the committees, both at the House of Rep and the Senate, on electoral matters, they have been working as a joint committee from the beginning, even from the point of submitting memoranda. I'm also, privy to the fact that the joint committee were also going across the region for, legislative interaction with people. I'm also aware that even during the public hearing, it was a joint committee that had the public hearing. So the question is, what has the House of Rep considered that it is not almost the same version with that of the Senate? That's point number one. Point number two is I'm also privy to the technical support that even Nigerians, young people, civil society organizations are giving to the National Assembly, the Joint Committee on the issues of this amendment. And I think that has also existed over time, but this particular, round of amendment, there has been so much of massive support that have been given technically to this committee. Then the question is, the committee has done its job at the committee level. They've gone for public hearings to get the input of Nigerians. They've written their committee reports. They've presented at the parliament. But what we're waiting for is the clause by clause consideration so that it goes through the final rounds of, reading in the National Assembly. Then it is cleaned up by the Business and Ethics Committee, then transmit to the president for his assent. I think it's just basically for the National Assembly, the Senate, to do the job. Because Nigerians are saying we want our electoral framework to be amended in a way that will produce credible elections. And the National Assembly is actually, or the Senate to be precise, is actually pushing back or not even communicating, to Nigerians on this matter. And that's worrisome.
All right, thank you. Oluwafemi Adebayo, as they say, when you're not speaking, you're actually still speaking. That silence doesn't mean you're not communicating, you're actually communicating. Thank you once again.
That's right.
Oluwafemi is the head research and strategy at Kimpact Development Initiative. Thank you for coming in this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Well, in a somewhat related matter, the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria has renewed its demand for the immediate removal of the INEC chairman, Professor Joash Amubiton, citing concerns over his neutrality and past conduct. Speaking at the Council's 2026 annual pre-Ramadan lecture in Abuja, the Council's president, Sheikh Bashir Umar, declared that the Muslim Ummah would not recognize any election conducted under the current leadership. The Council alleges that a legal brief previously authored by the INEC chairman, which claimed the existence of a Christian genocide in Nigeria, compromises his integrity as an unbiased electoral umpire. Sheikh Umar noted that the federal government has repeatedly dismissed claims of a targeted genocide, arguing that the chairman's prior stance is a direct conflict with official national positions.
In the legal brief that he sent, which he made, in which he established the existence of a Christian genocide, which the federal government has categorically dismissed and said that there is no Christian genocide in Nigeria, puts him in direct conflict to what is the position of the nation. And his position will be an act that is unacceptable and has shown that He is clearly religiously biased, and as an umpire for the democratic practice of electing a democratic government, you need to have someone who is clearly unbiased, whose integrity is not compromised. Because of the compromise of his integrity, we feel that the honorable thing for him to do is to resign, and if not, the government should actually dismiss him or at least retire him. The United States of America, they designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern due to some frivolous allegations that there is Christian genocide in the country. And you know very well that Nigeria is a secular state. But with this lecture, people will be guided so that we'll have a peaceful period, and then we'll have Nigeria that can work for all of us.
When 6th edition returns ahead of the FCT Council elections, Kabusa Wari residents demand again basic amenities. Join us again for details. Welcome back to the 6th edition, and here's a recap of our top stories. Federal government considers deployment of military veterans to secure ungoverned spaces. Senate moves to investigate Christmas Day strike in Sokoto. And death toll from landslide in Indonesia rises to 38, with dozens still unaccounted for. President Bola Tinubu has signed a strategic cooperation agreement with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to strengthen ties between both countries. Tayyip Erdogan had welcomed President Tinubu with an official ceremony in the capital, Ankara. Tinubu's motorcade was greeted by 103 cavalry units on their venue leading to the presidential complex, symbolizing the 103rd anniversary of the Turkish Republic. The ceremony was attended by senior Turkish officials, including ministers, presidential advisors, and the Ankara government. The following are the agreement highlight: Defense Cooperation, Economy and Trade Joint Committee, Halal Quality Assurance, Cooperation in Higher Education, Cooperation in Media and Communication, Cooperation in Diaspora Policy, Cooperation in Education, Cooperation between the Ministries of Foreign Affairs.
Effort at terrorism, discuss how we could defeat elements of destabilization, banditry, and horror. We will work together to achieve that. Take it to the bank. You can bet on me that I will be there with you.
Terrorist organizations emerging, particularly in Africa's Sahel region, unfortunately pose a threat to the peace of the entire continent. We stand by the friendly people of Nigeria in their fight against terrorism under the leadership of President Tinubu. In fact, today, we addressed opportunities for closer cooperation in the fields of military training and intelligence. We stated that we are ready to share our country's significant experience in the fight against terrorism.
This meeting gave both countries an opportunity to strengthen, to deepen their bilateral connections, to strengthen various other sectors of cooperation, particularly in defense, in intelligence, sharing in counterterrorism measures. Turkey is committed to Nigeria's fight against terror.
And now I'm being joined by Charles Chukwuebuka Onwuche, lawyer and international relations expert. Thank you for joining us, Charles.
Pleasure to be here.
Charles, this trip to Turkey, first of all, a couple of people I've heard them talk about, why is the president traveling again? I mean, he had just come back from one trip and he was going again. But if you look at the agreements that have been signed in this case now, would you say it was worth the trip?
I actually think it is. I think we are walking into a new year, and I think the president has made it very clear in his first couple of years of administration that Nigeria is open for business. But Nigeria is open for a two-way business. We recognize that this deal we have with Turkey You know, Nigeria is the 6th largest country we have in the world, Turkey being the 8th. And I think Nigeria is making it known that, hey, if you do good business with us, we're going to do good business with you.
So, do business. I look at some of the things: halal quality assurance, cooperation, higher education, media and communication, diaspora policy, education, ministries of foreign affairs, economy and trade, and then security.
Sure.
Now, I know that every country is allowed to multi-relate with anybody they
Sure.
want in terms of all of this.
Sure.
But then some will now be concerned in terms of how do you then say, okay, this is where I stand, this is my own area. At what point do we say, okay, this is my space? Right now, the Nigerian Senate is looking to investigate the airstrikes of
Sure.
Christmas Day.
Sure.
According to the senator brought up, Senator Ningi, they were not briefed. There was no, as you say in the US, there was no congressional approval
Sure.
for that airstrike, and
Sure.
so it happens. But we're still going ahead to sign on the agreement. At what point do you say, okay, enough is enough? Can we just go back and look inwards?
You know, I think it's very important that our legislature creates and make it very clear what the path that the president can take. You know, as a legal practitioner, we all follow rules and policy and procedures, so it's really critical for us. And we're always going to know there are going to be mistakes, right? So we're going to acknowledge that. But we want to make sure that every person who's a partner with us, whether it's on a federal level, state level, legislative level, bring those things to fruition. You made mention of something else I think is very interesting. I think when we look at this Turkey and Nigeria deal, is a good example of that. There are things that Turkey can offer us that other countries cannot. So it's very clear that Nigeria is being very strategic and intentional with the request, as we can see. Education is very important. We have a huge swath of residents who live here, so education is critical. Having a stronger healthcare system and also policy.
But health wasn't mentioned here.
Yeah, you know, I think the thing about it is you can't kill everything at the same time, right? But number one is education. One of the things that was brought up was education. Another one was security. As we know, security is a big issue here. And obviously bilateral trade agreements was also important.
Why I particularly, I was actually going to go to that part about the health thing,
Sure.
because I do know that a lot of Nigerians go to Turkey for medical attention. So one would be thinking that could be one of the first areas of partnership that Nigeria will be seeking. But instead, it's not here.
Well, you know, because it wasn't seeked in Turkey doesn't mean that Nigeria is not looking for other partners. Like I said before, I think it's very important to look at what a country offers. We see, hey, if they offer A, B, and C, if those things are amazing for us, we take it. And I would say we should expect, and we will see, more bilateral trade agreements with Nigeria and other partners throughout Europe, Central America, of course, the United States, because they have things that we don't have that we can also partnership. And the reverse is very true. Turkey signed on for deals with Nigeria because they are also in need of our resources, our human capital, human intelligence. So we're going to provide very good quality services for them, and the reverse.
Let's look at that human capital and human intelligence
Sure.
and the resources that Nigeria has. Nigeria has natural resources,
Yes.
human and natural resources, a lot of them. Many of those resources are exported raw,
Sure.
not at full value. And so at what point do we think Nigeria needs to stop? Look inwards to work on its resources and then look to sell them?
That's a good question. I think we have to run parallel tracks there. Number one is we have to first think about what is the infrastructure is necessary to do those things, and what is the timeline for creating those infrastructure. So whether it's the machinery it takes to make roads, the machinery it takes to transfer crude oil into one of the 4 pillars of derivatives from oil, and then putting a time frame for that, saying, hey, in the next 10 years, we want to be 100% of exporting crude oil or extracting crude oil and refining it at home. And I think that's a good example of that. So I think first, again, make an assessment of where we are today. What are the benchmarks we want to put together in the next 4, 5, 10 years and implement those benchmarks?
Okay. Thank you so much. Charles Chukwuebuka Onwuche is a lawyer and international affairs expert. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
We look forward to having you again.
Sure.
Thank you. Let's move on now to the FCT. February the 21st is drawing real close for the local council elections. But the residents in parts of the Abuja municipal area are asking for something else. They are looking for a better living condition. From Waru and Kabusa communities, residents say their expectations are simple: access to basic amenities and a local government that listens to the people. Our correspondent Sumaya Abubakar visited Waru and Kabusa communities in Amak, where residents openly spoke about the challenges they face and what they expect from whoever emerges after the elections.
We are suffering about electricity in this community. If you look at this community, the population is more than 5,000 people. And if you could imagine the population of more than 5,000 people, they cannot have access to light within a week because the few transformers that we have cannot carry out the appliances that we have in this community.
If you can go around this community, you can see we lack of borehole. People that get borehole, it's they are individual borehole. It's not from the what government has or brought to us.
Either polytechnic or college of education.
Well, we're expecting a detailed report of our visit to that area, to those communities. But for now, she joins me to give us details of her engagement with the residents, and some of them that spoke that you were hearing, some of them there. Sumaya, thank you so much. Today you've gone to another community. I know that yesterday you were in some other space, but what the residents are asking for in Waru and Kabusa appears to be almost the same thing that the residents you saw yesterday. Where did you go to again yesterday? I can't remember.
Honestly, I would say that yesterday I did know that I went to a community, but I also cannot remember the name currently, because in just a span of 1 to 2 weeks, we have gone to multiple communities in Amak. And, one of the things I would actually say is that there seems to be the same demand, which is water. And for FCT, this is the nation's capital. Water should not be something that people would have to ask for. It should be a basic amenity that everybody can access. Right. Now, when you're talking about people from Kabusa and Waru, these are people that have never seen potable water in their life before. According to them, especially when you go to the Waru, it's just a few community members that decided to, that are a bit, rich to some extent, or have the money that they could afford to dig a borehole in their house. And then these people tend to sell it. So people are literally buying portable water that everybody should, have access to. Kabusa as well said they've never seen, tap water. Some of them go as far as going to a river to also get potable water. So that's their concern. But then I would say, for Kabusa, they said something a bit different. The elder person that we met, a traditional leader, talked about having primary to secondary school, another primary school that he said the community built themselves, but there is also government primary school. But he pointed out that they need like a polytechnic or college of education for Kabusa and its environs, because these people don't have tertiary institutions in that community, which is really far, outside, almost outside Amak Council. And also they pointed out, a younger person pointed out that the fact that they need jobs, that their youth, they're just sitting around, not having anything to do. And the youth felt they are not feeling the support and love of the government. They said that they've made this plea a long time ago, saying they need employment, job opportunities, but the government seemed not concerned about them.
I was going to ask you, are they feeling like their concerns have been ignored by the past local administrations? But obviously, that's what you've already said. So thank you so much, Sumaya. And let's just hope that the voices of these people will be heard even as we go and approach the February 21st elections. Thank you once again.
Yes.
Staying in the FCT, residents of Jigakuchi and Shape village communities in the Federal Capital Territory are concerned about the lack of, again, basic amenities. Clean water, electricity, healthcare, quality schools. They say despite repeated appeals to the authorities, little or nothing has been done. Now, with the council polls just around the corner, they're again wanting their voices to be heard. Chiso Mukafo was there in our report.
A visit to Jikakochi and Shape communities located in the Buhari area councils of Abuja, with only one healthcare facility located in Jikakochi and one paid community health worker. The facility caters to over 2,000 people from 4 communities comprising Jikakochi, Shape, Somakba, and Kahima within the same catchment area.
Our number one challenge is shortage of manpower. When I say manpower, I mean we need staff. We only have one paid health worker here. The rest of us are volunteers, which is not supposed to be. You can see that the clinic is too small for the community. These clinics serve more than 4 settlements.
Ba mu da asibiti kami mutum ya samu ciwo nan muna tashi mu je pape ba iya ba zuwa matema ta damuwa mu kenan.
Residents have also cried out over lack of good roads, which has hindered development in the area. They say that access to clean water is also non-existent, particularly in Shape community where they fetch their water for domestic use from just one stream.
Abin da ina bukata a Shape nan ba mu da ruwa, ba mu da makaranta, ba mu da wuta, ba mu da hanya. Zuwan kuma kun ga inda hanya yake kamin ku kai nan.
Je lafi da kai ne mu doka na kai san gani wuya na ciwo. To haka ne muna yi wahala da ruwa.
Even our river here, cow come pass for up there. We go come see water don't spoil. We no go drink water that day be that. We no go watch that day. We go wait till next day where water go clear before we go start to fish.
The community also says that there has been no power supply in the area for about 4 years. They say poles were mounted, but were vandalized, stolen, and destroyed.
House of Ref, Mr. Mika Jiba, now he can help us with the pole. He come put the pole, he come put the wire, sometimes safe. Pole come fall, he come put another one again. The wire where they up, thief. Then come the cut the thief farm. Go buy a generator, use them for a house. Even solar, say when they put them for security, this thing. We not get anything. Anybody who get money, you can buy generator use.
Despite promises made by successive governments, they say they have not benefited from the dividends of democracy.
Tani suna zana ana cewa za mu je mu yi siyasa sai mu fita nan duka duk da yara muna je siyasa. Mutum ya zai hau ba damu damu.
With yet another local council election coming up, Jikakochi and Shape communities are hoping this would not be business as usual. In Abuja for News Central, I am Chisom Okafo.
A Revenue Mobilization Allocation Fiscal Commission has pledged transparency in resolving long-standing disputes over contested oil fields across the country. The chairman of the commission, Mohammed Shehu, while speaking at the flag-off ceremony in Abuja, says that the agency has commenced the plotting of coordinates for disputed and newly drilled oil and gas wells across Nigeria in a bid to determine the true ownership of contested oil and gas resources. Shehu says the Interagency Technical Committee set up to verify the coordinates of the affected wells has concluded its work and will now commence the plotting phase of the coordinates.
Actually to the field to take those coordinates, and we did it in conjunction with the surveyor generals of all the oil producing states so that they can be witnesses, and the NUPRIC as well as Office of the Surveyor General of the Federation as well as National Boundary Commission. We had uniform, they've been to the high sea, they've been to the creek, they've been everywhere. That exercise just recently concluded, sometimes last week. Those things, you know, whenever new oil fields started producing after a while, they will want to know which state actually owns that or which state should get that 13% derivatives. So it's in this line that we are doing this exercise, and we intend to do it fairly, justly, and equitably without any bias.
The Uganda Communications Commission has fully restored internet and social media services nationwide, ending the temporary blackout that was initiated during the elections. The UCC Executive Director Nyombi Tembo says the measure was necessary to address national security concerns. Now, the President Yoweri Museveni secured a second term, while Robert Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobby Wine, received second position. Bobby Wine remains in hiding, citing safety concerns. His wife recently posted a video alleging attacks on her family home, highlighting ongoing post-voting tensions. I'm now being joined by activist Dr. Stella Nyanzi. She joins from Bochum in Germany. Thank you, Dr. Nyanzi, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
From your perspective as an activist, how would you say the recent election-related events, especially the arrests, the abductions, crackdowns, how would you say all these activities impacted the elections in Uganda?
Right. So from an activist perspective, the elections in Uganda were not free and fair. There was heavy militarization, heavy presence of the military on the streets, at the polling stations. Many of us had been advocating for electoral reforms, which were not put in place, even if we had 5 years of preparation. The levels of brutality, arrests, abductions, particularly of opposition leaders, were generally extrajudicial. A number of people have been disappeared and cannot be located in prisons that are gazetted, and over 2,000 comrades who were found at polling stations or taken from their homes have been registered in police stations. Some are facing trumped-up charges and have already been taken to remand in prison. So in terms of impacting the elections, many of us in the activist spaces feel that the sham elections that were recently concluded were neither free nor fair.
But you as a female, an activist, you've been arrested. You've witnessed firsthand the dangers that come with speaking out. But we now see that more women, like Bobby Wine's wife, 2 female vice presidents and activists, and others have been abducted and detained without explanation. This wave of actions against women in the political sphere, what do they say about not just Uganda, for instance, the political space in Africa? Do women stand a chance?
Women stand a chance. Africa belongs to us too. 1 man, 1 vote, they told us, but it should be 1 man, 1 woman, 1 vote. The political space belongs to us as well. What dictatorships and despots such as Yoweri Museveni want to do is to take away women's suffrage that was fought for from women. They want to reduce the participation, particularly of members of the opposition and dissidents who are critical of government. But I think that the implication, therefore, for us as women activists and women organizers is to organize much more, to consolidate the space that we have and to keep working to demobilize against fear, to unite in spite of our class differences, our age, generational differences, our geographical, rural to urban differences, but also our partisan differences. Part of the problem is that we are so fragmented by political party organizing that we cannot come together to raise our female vote and quota. And I think part of what we need to do as women is to keep advocating for women participation, for which Uganda and Africa perhaps is praised to have emancipated women. But what does women emancipation mean when female political party members, particularly in the leadership, get abducted simply because of an election? They get abducted, they get shot at, they get detained, they get slapped with trumped-up charges. What does it mean for women to be emancipated when it's only women who are pro-government, only women who stand in support of the ruling party who can participate meaningfully? I think it's important for us as the African feminist movement, as women in Uganda, to come together and consolidate our gains. Otherwise, patriarchy is seen to rear its head once again, even within electoral democracy.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Stella Nyanzi. I'm afraid we'll just have to leave it here for now. We do hope
Thank you very much.
We do hope that we'll be able to bring you in some other time for a deeper conversation with more time. Thank you so much. Dr. Stella Nyanzi joined us from Bochum in Germany. Thank you once again. The death toll from a landslide in Indonesia has risen to 38, with dozens of people still unaccounted for. Search teams continue rescue operations days after the disaster struck a mountain village on Saturday. Heavy rainfall triggered the landslide in Pasir Langu village in West Banjung on Java Island, destroying dozens of homes and forcing residents to flee. Officials say the number of missing persons has been revised down to 27, with more than 50 houses damaged and over 650 people displaced. Rescue workers are using both manual searches and heavy equipment in unstable terrain. And that's all we have for you today on the 6th edition. Before we go, a look at the headlines. We told you that the federal government is considering deploying military veterans for security operations in ungoverned spaces. Also, that the Senate is moving to investigate the Christmas Day strike in Sokoto. And you heard that the death toll from the landslide in Indonesia has risen to 38, with dozens still unaccounted for. Remember, I would like to hear from you. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number showing on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV on all the platforms. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Neota Igbe.